What's a small town dark secret you know? When I was in about first grade, the gym teacher was fired for molesting little girls. Some of the dads went and talked to him and scared him so bad he just disappeared, left all his stuff in his rental place and everything. I was middle-aged before I realized I should probably wonder whose land he's buried on. My husband's family tells a similar story. His sister came home from the hotel where she worked, crying, with her uniform torn. She didn't want to talk about it, but then told them her boss tried to rape her. Next day dad takes my husband out for a ride and asks him where C's boss lives. Monday C's goes into work, boss isn't there and never returns, leaving all his stuff and his paycheck. Dad was a VP with the Teamsters. I think they just scared the guy out of town, but family thinks he's in a swamp somewhere with Hoffa. Yup, he's dead. Even if scared, folks don't leave their stuff. Paycheck maybe but not their stuff. Reddit celebrates this sort of stuff, but my brother was beaten to an inch of his life by friends of a girl he slept with after she told them he raped her. The police investigated it, and under the pressure of interview she admitted it was a lie. We have a justice system with a burden of evidence for a reason. It's not perfect, but vigilante mob justice makes far more mistakes. An extremely wealthy grandma had an affair with a pool boy. He called it quits, and she accidentally ran him over and killed him. I don't remember if she actually caught her charge for it, but she didn't do any time. The family knows it was deliberate, talks about it nonchalantly like, "Don't piss grandma off, she ran over the last man that crossed her." Brother and sister slept together. Everyone found out. The sister disappears for almost 10 years. Rumor was she killed herself out of embarrassment. Out of the blue she popped back up one day, thinking, hoping, we'd all forgotten. Nobody forgot, but nobody mentions it either. I bet you were happy to see your sister after so long. When I was a firefighter we had an arsonist in the city. They would walk around at night until they found a garage door that was left open, and then they'd start a fire in the garage. It did not matter if the residents were home or not. We had no leads other than it was a college student, as there was a discernible pattern of the fires stopping during winter and summer breaks. The police, fire department, and the highest levels of local government worked to keep the nature of fires a secret as they were worried about how it would impact the town's image. So, instead of telling people to close their fucking garage doors at night, nearly 20 families lost their homes. The arsonist was never caught, and presumably is still lighting fires in some other town. Why didn't they just make a bait house to catch the dude? While our town was small, 11k, it was part of a plus 55k metro area that included a college with 15k students. I just don't think it would have worked. In terms of location, there was no pattern that we could come up with. Based on what you've described, this almost sounds like the arsonist plaguing the city I was a police officer in. Except we eventually caught the person. It was a 12-year-old boy. While walking home from school he'd start the fires, but wouldn't start any during the time of year when school wasn't in session. Growing up, Amir had 2 teenage children and a baby. It was common knowledge the baby was the offspring of his 2 kids. It was just one of those things people didn't talk about. After he left office, his daughter gave birth to a kid by him as well. And, no, I did not grow up in Alabama. Wait. The girl had a baby with both her brother and her dad. Roll Tide. Country roads. Take me home. West Virginia. The Devil House. Now, it had been around my hometown for decades. Enough different generations of kids had their own mythos. I had an English teacher that went to the same school in the late 80s. By then it was vacant but someone had painted a pentagram on the wall. You had to know where it was. Pull over on the old highway coming into town at a certain point. There was no driveway or anything, but you could see a gate if you knew where to look. Then you go into the woods a bit and bam, it almost appears out of nowhere on you. That's how well it was hidden. For the most part, every high school class would have a couple of people venture out to see it and leave their own small mark. Everyone was just sure Satanists or witches were meeting there occasionally. But later, I found out the real story from my dad. I'd asked him, but he didn't make the connection between that house's original purpose and the later myths until I showed him. The reason that hidden house was built was for a former wealthy farmer's lesbian daughter. didn't have the heart to disown her, so he hid her away there in the late 60s. Because 60s, there were some wild parties out there, and girls were converted to lesbianism. Reed already knew damn well they were gay, so of course that small southern town assumed the devil was behind it. I love it when haunted houses turn out to be lesbian factories instead. Small UK town. Man taken to hospital, dies on arrival. Local news had announced that police were looking to speak to witnesses, then announced police have upgraded it to a murder investigation. A few days later, some guys are arrested in connection to the case. A couple of months pass, and they are sentenced to prison for murder. That's all that was made public. Heard through some friends who have family working at the local hospital that the victim had power drill inflicted injuries to every joint in his body. Grapevine says he'd sexually assaulted the underage daughter of one of the guys who then murdered him. Our small town's local mayor had raped his 23-year-old daughter for years, starting when she was 7 and ending when she was 23, and finally told someone. He somehow managed to win the next election and is still mayor. Edit, I should mention that some good did come out of the story. Once it became hot news around the town, she ended up moving to a new country to start her life over. She ended up meeting a super rich guy who is kind to her and takes care of her. She is now a stay-at-home mom and her man treats her to a lavish lifestyle. I wish her the best. Disgusting man. There are these old abandoned mines, as in mineral mines. Think man-made caves in the side of a mountain near my hometown town, where kids used to go to smoke weed and make out before they put metal gates over them. When I was in high school there was this huge thing where a cop went missing, car and all, while he was on duty. He just didn't show up at shift change. This was before GPS and smartphones etc. People thought he'd been killed by gang members or something. There were no gangs in the town, but everyone was convinced that they came down from the nearest big city to do crimes. Eventually they announced they found him. Accidental death. Very sad. Wife and young kids etc. What wasn't in the news, but everyone knew through word of mouth. He and another cop's wife were having an affair, and they were found in his patrol car in one of the Makiad mines, dead of carbon monoxide poisoning. Brother, last thing that ever happened to her was getting fucked by the law. My hometown has a famous drug addict, that is, everyone knows who he is. He's lived there for 70 years and his crimes are town gossip. Most of the time it's small stuff, stolen bikes, and once a canoe that he just leaves somewhere, living in a park, when he doesn't feel like going home for a few days, shit like that. He's mostly seen as a harmless funny character. His brain is seriously damaged after hard drug use since his early teens. What is rarely mentioned is that when he still had a house he used to steal dogs and beat them to death in his basement. A girl in my graduating class of 23 kids had a ton of parties at her house. Her mother was only like 15 years older than us, and she always also attended these parties. At one of these parties, 2 boys in my class attempted to woo the girl's mother. They ended up actually having a main-ager toy with her mom. I moved away from that small town when I was a sophomore, but I will never forget that poor girl who had a mom that got tag-teamed by some high schoolers. Edit, sorry guys, I meant main-age Troyes. My years of school French failed me. Also there are a lot of people that have similar stories I guess. This incident took place in a small town in Missouri. I fucked your mom last night. Popular pediatric orthodontist is in jail now for having sex with his high school / young college aged employees in exchange for painkillers and nitrous. And when it came out he admitted to being high while doing surgery most of the time. So this guy was taking turns on the nitrous tank while taking out my 4 impacted wisdom teeth. But he knows some people, so that story went away very quickly. I roll little shop of horrors. A guy from my grad year went missing about a year ago. There was a massive search in my small western British Columbian town. People freaking out left, right and center, the whole shebang. It was a weird feeling. This guy was friends with a few really good friends of mine. Anyhow, so then somebody finds him driving nearby Edmonton, and it turns out he ran off because he knocked up a girl in my grad class. What was kinda shitty was how his parents failed to mention to the police that some of his clothes and belongings were missing. So that's basically 90% of what people my age have been talking about. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe.